Hello and welcome to Nation Talks. I'm Preeti Prakash. Let's start with Jammu and Kashmir this time. The abrogation of Article 370 and 35A of the Constitution of India for Jammu and Kashmir by the government, the BJP government, on the August 5, 2019, marked a paradigm shift in the identity of the erstwhile state. To talk about this, the history of Jammu Kashmir, and what is the future ahead for the Union Territory, I have with me Major General Anuj Mathur, who's a Kashmir expert, and so much so that Kashmir is like the back of his hand. He was commissioned into the Jammu Kashmir Rifles Regiment and commanded his unit in the Kashmir Valley during Operation Parakram. A motivational speaker, he is also actively involved in spreading awareness concerning national security, Kashmir, and China. Welcome, Major General Anuj Mathur.
Thank you very much. It's been very kind.
I'll start by asking, Kashmir is a subject that is keenly observed by not just the domestic audience, but the international community as well. Walk us through a brief history of Jammu and Kashmir since independence till the turn of the century.
See, I'll tell you, to understand Kashmir in actuality, we'll have to get back to some of the prehistoric text time. Then we'll have to see what Kashmir was in ancient India. How did it go through medieval period? And then how it came to 1946. So I'll take some time spending on this aspect of the history. Because unless you know what Kashmir was 5,000 years ago, it is not going to be very easy to understand what is happening today. More than 5,000 years ago, this Kashmir existed in its form. A lot of places have changed, but Kashmir has remained Kashmir all throughout. There was no names. There was no Karnataka, there was no Maharashtra, no Tamil Nadu, no nothing. But Kashmir was always there. 5,000 years ago, it was there. It finds its mention in Mahabharata. It finds its mention in all the era beyond that. I'm not going to go into the details. I've got many tell you on all these things. But let us see what it was in the ancient India. It was a part of the Mauryan Empire. When it was a part of the Mauryan Empire, you know what it was? Mahayana Buddhism has taken birth in Kashmir. How many of us are aware? Then from here it moved to Tibet, then to China, Korea, Japan, and all the places. The second Buddhist conference, which lasted for 6 months, took place in Kashmir. And then this Buddhism's Mahayana sect was taken to the rest of the world. From the 4th century till the 14th century, various dynasties of Hindu kings ruled that Kashmir. I would like to make a mention only of one, and that was Karakoram dynasty. And the greatest ever king, Lalitaditya, was a part of that Karakoram dynasty. We know Akbar the Great, we know Ashoka the Great, but not many are aware of Lalitaditya, also known as Alexander of India. His empire was more than the combined empires of Akbar and Ashok, probably. His empire extended to the Caspian Sea towards the northwest. It went right down to Kaveri Basin in the south. It went to Kamrup in Assam towards the east. It went up to Tibet. That was the time. That was the time when Rashtrakoot were ruling Maharashtra and Gujarat. There was a Maharaja in Kannauj who used to, pay his allegiance to Lalitaditya. He was the greatest ever king, and his capital was Kashmir. So we need to know that. The Islam, and one more important aspect which I want to bring out, is he ruled at the time in the 7th and 8th century when the Islam was spreading like a frenzy through the Central Asia. That is the time when he ruled. Islam came to Kashmir in the 14th century. And that's a very interesting way how it came to Kashmir in 14th century. There was a gentleman, a nobility from Swat. Swat is now where Pakistan, this northwest frontier province Pakistan is. And he staged a coup in his kingdom. Did not succeed. He ran away from there and came to Kashmir to take asylum. He was given asylum. Probably Maharaja Udayandev was the Maharaja of Kashmir at that time. Probably he thought that Islam is knocking the doors of NWFP, that is Swat, and this gentleman belongs to the royalty of that place. So he may well be a big time asset for us to be able to handling the Islam data. So he was not only given the asylum, but was also given some place to be, and was also given a position in the cabinet or whatever nobility. This happened somewhere around 1315 AD. In 1339, the same Shah Mir stages a coup. The guy who entered India as in palace intrigue, he stages a coup and removes the Maharaja Udayandev. All this happens with this thing of all the nobility of that time, the cabinet of the Maharaja. And he takes over as the ruler, and he becomes the founder of the Shamsuddin dynasty, which lasted for 222 years. But what must be remembered is that when he became the Maharaja, the whole process went through with the Raj Tilak, with Sanskrit Mantrochar, and with complete Shaivik Hindu systems, procedures. And mind you, it continued for another 111 years. The Sanskrit continued to be the court language till 1450 AD. Must correlate it with what is happening in the rest of the country. Islam came to rest of the country in the 12th century. First attack was in the 8th century, 711, but it came in the 12th century. Kashmir remained away from Islam till 1450. And we today see that it's a, I mean, anyway, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but it was in 1450 when Persian was introduced as a court language. For the first time, the rulers were tyrant. Mass scale conversions took place because when Shah Mir took over in 1339 as the first Islamic ruler of Kashmir, his guru of sorts came, and he told him that, look, if you want to rule this, you will have to convert them. And when you convert them, when the Maharaja starts or the Badshah or the Sultan starts converting, it's very easy to win over the converts. That was the aim. They converted. There are stories and stories, endless number of stories as to how the conversions took place. Who all came from where to convert these people? But large-scale conversions took place. Then somewhere around 1405, 1408, let's not go into the exact years, there was a sultan by the name of Sikandar, also known as Butshikan. That this gentleman was the worst of the sultans, very tyrant, and he committed so many atrocities. And mind you, the first exodus of people who did not convert took place in 1405 or 1408 of the Kashmiri Hindus. He was known as Butshikan because he believed in destruction of all the Hindu temples and their statues. There is a story about that famous Martand temple, which is in a place called Matan, which actually is Martand, but it has now become Matan, part of Anantnag district. And that's a sun temple in ruins. In fact, there were 4 famous sun temples in the country. Konark survived somehow. Other 3 are destroyed. One is this Martand, one is in Motera in Gujarat, and one is gone to Pakistan. It is a sheer magnificence of architecture. I have personally gone and seen that temple. Massive structure. He tried to break it in all possible ways, including putting it to fire. Acres worth of jungles were uprooted and the wood was used by digging trenches all around the temple so that it can be destroyed. I don't know what kind of mindset is this. There was nothing to loot in it. He just wanted to destroy it because it does not belong to you. Or the conversions, if you leave these places, the conversions may not take place. Some people may still continue to go there. That is the kind of mindset it was. Anyway, that notwithstanding, so that little exodus took place. All this is recorded. Now, the first ever recorded history, probably in the whole world, is Raj Tarangini. I'm sure some people. So Raj Tarangini, Kalhan was the gentleman who wrote Raj Tarangini in the 7th and 8th centuries. And all this Raj Tarangini starts with the first king Neel, who is the son of Kashyap Rishi. And Kashyap Rishi is supposed to have brought out Kashmir from a reservoir of water. From there, 5,000 years ago, it starts. Raj Tarangini means, it's simple language. Raj means Raja. Tarangini means it's a flow. And it works as a flow of Maharajas right from the time Kashmir came into being. 5,000 years. And it goes on. And you will notice that barring a few years here and a few years there, it is all what kind of Maharajas you had. Only place to have had Sanskrit as the court language in 1450 AD in India. This place has produced such top-end Sanskrit scholars. So much of contribution of this Kashmir has been in the Sanskrit literature that if we have to remove the Kashmiri Sanskrit literature from the body of Sanskrit literature of the nation, it's anybody's guess what would be left. Abhinav Gupta, another name which I would like to take. Abhinav Gupta is a gentleman who has written some 46 works. He's supposed to be the most accomplished, intelligent person of the millennia. He's being taught in 80 different universities, unfortunately none in India, in the world. His works include a plethora of subjects, and the one work better than the other. We can talk about it any length. Now, thereafter came Mughals. This dynasty lasted for 222 years, I said. Then Mughals came, then Pathans came, then all these people from all over kept coming. Then finally, when Afghans were there, the Durrani dynasty was there. And they were very, very, very tough on the people of Kashmir. Then they went and asked Maharaja Ranjit Singh in Lahore to save them from the atrocities of these people. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh, there are stories, but Maharaja Ranjit Singh then came, attacked and captured Kashmir. And that was the first time after 1339 of let's say 1450, when the Kashmiris could breathe. Otherwise, they were choked. The unoriginal Kashmiris. Sikh rule lasted till the first Anglo-Sikh War. In the Anglo-Sikh War, the British defeated the Sikhs, and the Dogra, Maharaja Gulab Singh, he was on the British side. And then they gave the Kashmir thing in 1846 to Maharaja Gulab Singh, to the Dogras. And they said that we are giving it to you, but Maharaja Gulab Singh paid 75 lakh rupees. 75 lakh in 1846. Your imagination, your guess, what it would be like. What it would be like.
Yeah.
So 75 lakh. But that was the beginning of the Dogra rule. And that Dogra rule lasted till 1947. And in 1947, this poor Kashmiri, now who were in minority, were given back to Abdullahs and all these people. Now, a little bit about what happened in the 40s. Now, since we have just very, very briefly, I mean, there are 2 hours I can talk on the history of Kashmir, but very brief, I have told you. Now, in 1940s, when the British decided to partition the country, there were two entities. One was British India and one was the princely states. So British India, one Mr. Radcliffe comes, he takes a big, thick pen and makes a line, and that divides. This side of the line is Pakistan, and that side of the line is India. You can see the movies where there's a movie in which there's a brothel, half of it which goes to Pakistan, half of it comes to India, and it's an interesting film. So that is what he do. Mindlessly, he knows nothing on ground. He knows no terrain. He just cut through. Then, second issue was, that's how the British India was divided. Second thing was princely states. So they said, what will you do? He says, what we do is we'll have a referendum. Jinnah was a very sharp fellow. Basically, a high-end advocate and very sharp guy. So he said, yeah, if you have a referendum, wherever there is majority of Hindu, most places Hindus were in majority. Things will go. He says no. He asked a counter question to the British. He says, who is sovereign in Britain? He says, obviously the crown. The crown decides what will go to Pakistan, what will go to India. He says yes. Then here also you let the Maharajas and Nawabs decide which side they want to. He had read it well. He knew there are large number of places which have Hindu majority but Muslims rulers. The only exception to that rule was Kashmir, which had Muslim majority, and this Muslim majority also, if you recollect what I have said in the history, is 100% converted. Not one original Muslim, 100% converted. So this the only place which had Hindu majority.
A Muslim majority and
Hindu minority.
And a Hindu ruler.
Yes. But why he took a chance? Because of two reasons. One reason was that this was an area which was physically contiguous to Pakistan. So he thought that he will be able to handle it that way. And whereas Hyderabad was away, Junagadh was away, Jodhpur was away, so many, Bhopal was away. So he was saying, कि वो तो नवाबों की वजह से आ जाएगा, इसको हम वैसे ले लेंगे. That was his idea. Second, and an important reading of the situation was that most of the routes to Kashmir, land routes to Kashmir, went through Pakistan. If you were to go to Srinagar, you went via Muzaffarabad. Or when you have to go to Jammu, Sialkot. The railway line also went to Jammu via Sialkot. So he knew that he can choke and starve Kashmir Valley logistically from the areas which are coming to him in case of a. So what he thought, I will choke them, and then through the land route, I will be able to get them. That was the plan. That is why he said. And in any case, so many things happened. All these Nawabs of Bhopal and Hyderabad, Nizam, and all those people, they started showing eyes. But it was the authority of maybe Patel and the Prime Minister Nehru. So they were the ones who could manage to get these things in. So while all this thing was happening, he got desperate for Kashmir. So he sent his army along with Qabilis into Kashmir, and they started moving rapidly. Maharaja Hari Singh wanted to make Kashmir a Switzerland on the earth, second Switzerland. Neither here nor there, all by myself.
Independent country.
He was looking at that. So what he did, he signed a standstill agreement with Pakistan. So also he signed a standstill agreement with us. Now these standstill agreements, I'm sure people are aware, you're standstill agreements, we'll leave it at wherever we are and we'll not touch it till the time you finally take a call. But having seen what had happened, what was happening in other places, Jinnah sent his armed forces disguised as Qabilis in muftis into Kashmir. And when they were knocking at the doors of Srinagar, they had already reached Baramulla. They had done all what they wanted to in Baramulla. And then they reached the Kashmir forces. I belong to that regiment. The Jammu and Kashmir State Forces, which is now JAKREF. I am a part of that regiment. They fought, but there were large number of Muslim soldiers. There were some, people who were wanting to, will not call it mutiny, but revolt. So now Maharaja was in trouble. There were two more reasons which we must understand. One, Jawaharlal Nehru and Maharaja Hari Singh were daggers drawn, to say in the sweetest language. Maharaja Jawaharlal Nehru and Sheikh Abdullah were,
Friends.
or
Were friends.
I will not call them friends, but then they
were close.
had a so when Jinnah visited Kashmir, Sheikh Abdullah showed his, I will not call them tantrums, his eyes. Jinnah wanted to be the sole arbiter of the Muslim destiny in South Asia, or at least in the Indian subcontinent. He did not want anybody who will be, So Jinnah and Sheikh Abdullah, they were not very comfortable with each other. That is how Sheikh gave his support to a possible accession to the Union of India. And that is how, on the 26th of October 1947, the instrument of accession was signed. A lot of stories, kaise hua, wo gaya, yahan aaya. So I'll not go into that. That was signed. And 27th, the Indian Army was airlifted. They had already reached Badgam. Badgam is which is close to the Srinagar airport. In 2 more days, they would have taken Srinagar. And then they were thrown back. Now, that's where the history came. And Maharaja Hari Singh was, he signed the one thing that you must remember, that the instrument of accession, that which was signed by Maharaja Hari Singh, was exactly the same verbatim what was signed by all other principalities. So, a lot of people who know nothing about history, a lot of people will talk that, oh, humne to ye nahi bola tha, humne to wo nahi bola tha, Kashmir was a conditional. There was no condition. Exactly the same. Same paper, no change. So that's how it became a part of Indian Union.
If I can just make a point, it is said that the accession thing which the Maharaja signed, it did have the clauses which said that foreign affairs and defense will be with them only. How true is that?
Every single instrument of accession said the same thing. Exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Exactly the same thing. It had only those 4 things: communications, defense, finance, and external affairs. All of them. Okay. 100%. And then later on, they all accepted the Constitution of India when it was implemented. Now comes the biggest game which was played. Actors will know it. The independence came, or we'll call it, I normally don't call it independence, I call it transfer of power, because I don't believe that was the right thing. Anyway, that's my absolutely personal view. So what happened on 15th August 1947? Then we had a Constituent Assembly, and we had a caretaker government. The caretaker government, Jawaharlal Nehru was heading, and Constituent Assembly was there to write the Constitution and give that Constitution to India. All others were allowed to have their own constituent assemblies and have a constitution. But when the Constitution of India was in its final stages, you had representation in the drafting committee from all states, all those who were either part of that British India, which was a part of India now, and all princely states which had opted for India.
And this was in 1950?
But the whole thing is going on from 47 till then.
47.
That is why the government was only constitution wasn't there. So constitution drafting was going on. And when we are about to finish, it was about to be finished. There was no mention of Article 370 till then. In November 49, they come up with an idea that since this is the only place which is Muslim majority, only state, so it must get special privileges. And that was the beginning of the end. And Sheikh went to the Panditji, and he says, this is what, he says, what you do is you go to the drafting committee, go and meet Dr. Ambedkar. And he will do it, he will put it. So when he went, Dr. Ambedkar said in no uncertain terms that India is a new republic, a young republic, and you want me to backstab this republic by allowing special concessions to a particular state which are not available to all others. These were his words. He went back to Prime Minister. This time around, he told Sardar Patel that you get it going. Then Sardar Patel, whatever be the compulsions, whatever, he tried to go around. Bhimrao Ambedkar decided to boycott that meeting where this 370 was included. Salute to that gentleman. He walked out. This Article 370 has been included in the Constitution of India in the absence of the chairman of the drafting committee. The Congress Working Committee also unanimously rejected it. But yet, again, we will not go into the reasons, but the fact of the matter is it got included. And it gave such overwhelming concessions to the people of Kashmir. It had far-reaching effects, even now. And we've been able to, I'll come to that later. So it had far-reaching impact. And this was included. Then Constitution came into being, and 1950, January 26, it was implemented, and we all celebrate 26 January. End result was that Kashmir was given an opportunity to make their own constitution. First, I'll take you to 56, and then I'll bring you back to 54, because there's a very interesting thing which happened in 54. So they had their own drafting committee. They decided 75 members, 73 were unopposed. No one is going to tell you this. No one will teach you the history which I have told you. Nobody knows who Lalitaditya was. Nobody knows who Abhinav Gupta was. Because this and the 5,000 years of the history of Kashmir, which has been for some reason, which has been we've been kept away from that. Kept away. So, and we know only about these 400-500 years or maybe 700 years. That's it. We don't want to know about Alexander of India, but we know who was Akbar Babar and everybody else. Anyway, so they made a constituent assembly. Sheikh Abdullah ensured that all people are his men, and this assembly was made in 752, and then they eventually gave them a constitution in 1956. I hope you know that Kashmir had a separate constitution.
Yes.
And now this constitution, and a normal human thing would be that India has given a constitution in 1950. 6 years later, you're giving a constitution. Obviously, it should be a constitution better than the 1950 constitution. Obviously, I mean, I'm sure. But this constitution of Kashmir does not talk of fundamental rights. It is a retrograde step. It does not talk of any minority. It was very clear that it is us and everybody else have to vanish from here. There was no doubt on what was happening. It gave a flag. It gave a prime minister. On everything was different. And Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee, he went to Kashmir with a slogan, Ek Nishan, Ek Pradhan, Ek Vidhan. He crossed over Lakhanpur barrier. He was taken into custody and never came back. He was the first man to oppose 370. But that's it. He never got back. So 1956, this constitution, which was far worse than the Constitution of India, was implemented in Kashmir. Now we get back to 54. A huge constitutional fraud, as I call it, was committed by the government of India. Again, reasons not known. Through a Article 35 Alpha, which was introduced without any reference to the parliament of the country. No amendment to the Constitution of India can take place unless it is cleared by both the houses of the parliament. It was done through a presidential proclamation. And just a presidential proclamation, and 54A was 35A was applied in 1954 with a retrospective effect. That people who are there for last day, that means anybody who has come after 1944 into Kashmir was not a Kashmiri. Now, what I must tell you is that the people who crossed over during partition, there was a lot of Gadar, you know it, and people crossed over. They came to India. Similarly, some people went to Pakistan. So the people who came to India and chose to continue to remain in Kashmir, something happened to them. I'll come to that later. Those who came to India and chose to stay elsewhere, we made 2 prime ministers and 1 deputy prime minister out of them. Inder Gujral, Manmohan Singh, 2 prime ministers, and Lal Krishna Advani, a deputy prime minister. Now the same guys who came and chose to stay, because people were moving wherever the thing was going on. They chose to stay in Jammu, Kashmir, wherever. They are not even citizens of the country. They were. Now things are different. They were because they did not fulfill the condition of 35 alpha. That was the game, was only that. So that these people don't become the part of it. Another story. In 1956 or thereabouts, there was some issue regarding the people who, the Safai Karamcharis in Kashmir, J&K. So the government of James Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad was chief minister. They went to Punjab government and they said, "Ki bhai, madad kar do, help us because there is crisis." Then his Punjab chief minister said, "No, you have very difficult laws for citizenship and this, that, and the other. And people who come there by their choice, they can't even vote. Forget about contesting elections." He says, "No, we'll make special concessions for them." So based on that, they went there. Number of them, they called Balmiki Samaj people. The number has grown to a few lakh, 5-7 lakh today. And when their children became doctors, everybody, and then when they wanted to get into the government of J&K and do some service there, they were told that you came here to do Safai. You may have acquired a PhD from Harvard, but still only thing you can do is to Safai wala. That was the situation. All this happened because of that one interesting thing called Article 370. Then things kept happening. There was a Indira Sheikh Accord. Then the Prime Minister became Chief Minister, but they were allowed to retain the flag, this, that, and the other. All these things went on. Then when Sheikh passed away, his son Farooq Abdullah came. Now comes the turning point.
What year are you talking of?
1987. The elections of 1987, which were rigged to bring the INC and National Conference combined into power. That was the election in which everybody had taken part, including Syed Salahuddin, who's the chief of Hizbul Mujahideen in Pak-occupied Kashmir. And they were rigged very badly. Farooq Abdullah became the chief minister, but things were very, very bad and because of this problem, all those who were affected because of this, they took to arms. That was the turning point. The movement turned into a Azadi movement. And in the year 1990, January 19th to be precise, 1990, so much of atrocities were committed on the minority Hindus in Kashmir. Now I'll tell you what, just by doing the thing in Kashmir, the 97% or 95% majority of Muslims in Kashmir was actually minority, and they were getting all the benefits of minorities. And a single-digit percentage of Kashmiri Hindus was a majority. Because they said everything else is Constitution of Kashmir. This clause we will take it from Constitution of India, Government of India, that majority is Hindu and minority is Muslim. Marriage of convenience. So this is what had happened. Now, even that small percentage of Hindus in the valley was not acceptable, not tolerated. And they were, I don't want to use such words, but they were 10,000 rapes, massacres,
Yes.
Their leaders, the icons of Hindu society were picked up. The list is endless. I can name them, all of them. Literatures, professors, doctors, big people. And they were chosen, picked up, and killed.
It was a
And
black phase of the country. Yeah.
no, I am saying that may have been black phase, Preeti, but I will tell you what was blacker. That phase was black, and not accepting it, non-acceptance of that black phase by the government of India was the darkest phase. You have one killing in Delhi, or you have one rape somewhere. You at least you are tried, and if you are found guilty, then you are given punishment. People have not been tried. India is a signatory to the UN, organ which deals with genocides. This was a genocide. We have failed to even accept it as a genocide. Lakhs of people have been displaced.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this story you must listen to. This story, some of you must have heard him also. This story. In 1990, when things were hotting up, Pakistan took up a case with UNHRC, saying that a lot of atrocities are being committed by the Indian forces in Kashmir. So this, that, and the other. So this one was taken. Narsingh Rao was the prime minister at that time. So he sent a representation from the country. Now he said it will not be the government of India who will respond to it. It will be India who will respond to this because it concerns India. And obviously then they chose Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the boss of that, and there were people from all walks of life who went there. And when they gave a presentation, when they explained it to UNHRC that what has happened to these people, they didn't know what was hitting them. And it was the Iran who first recognized that, look, yes, it is what they're saying is right. And they withdrew, and slowly everybody else withdrew, and that thing fell flat. And it was accepted that it is not the human rights of the people in Valley which is taking place. It is the human right issue of the people who have been thrown out of the Valley. That small minority of Hindus. They were all masjids were telling them that leave the ladies, girls, and run away. See, I will tell you, when there is the 370 was there, whatever enactments of acts which were taking place in the country were not applicable. In 1978-79, in the time of Mrs. Gandhi, we inserted two words in the preamble of the country, a country's constitution, that is socialist and secular. And it is written with a proviso that is not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The law act on the misuse of religious places, not applicable there. Act on use of narcotics, no act passed by the Parliament of India is applicable there. Because of which they used all mosques. Each mosque has turned into a place for political activities. They shout their guts out against the country. So this all happened. All is happening because of that smart act, Article 370. And mind you, this 35A was not even 35A should have been between 35 and 36. It is not there. It has been put into an annexure. Hidden. A lot of scholars of the Constitution of India are not aware 35A exists. Because it is not there, you can't see it where it should be. So they have, it was a huge, I mean, I don't want to use that tough word, but conspiracy. Let's leave it at that. So now it doesn't stop there. Once they come back to India, now they think ke bhi abhi ho gaya. Now the same lot puts it up to the Human Rights Commission of the country. Justice Venkat Chalaya was the boss of that Human Rights Commission. The commission writes to Government of India, same government, same Prime Minister, same cabinet. They write to the Government of India. And the reply comes from there that the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits was self-induced. Period. I think there is nothing more than that we need to talk. It is all because all this is happening because of political compulsions, because you want to be politically right, because you are looking at the vote bank of a particular type. So possibly, I see no reason. I see no reason why things could not have been done. But it went on. Then 1998, the elections took place. That was the only year which actually, I wish I could have shown you a graph. It showed an upward, upward graph, a movement for economy of Kashmir. Only 1 year. It has never been, it's always been in red because it's only the money and the gunpowder in wrong hands. So it showed things probably could have improved. But again, the dispensation changed in 2003 and 4 or whatever, and then things started going back to what they were. The fact of the matter is that we have not handled the Kashmir rightly. It is the same Kashmir who fought shoulder to shoulder with Indian Army in 1948, 47-48 war. The locals today, they are not, even looking at what Indian Army is doing.
So we just talked about we talked about 1990 when the Pandits Hindus were forced harrowing time in the valley, and there was mass exodus. And so what was the sense in the country at that time? I mean, how was the country reacting to this kind of...
Unfortunately, the issue was that it was handled only at the political level. The rest of the country was not even aware of what was happening. Social media also was not all that active. There was only one TV channel. There were only radios, and the radios were talking of whatever they were talking. So the issue is the reaction from population at large of the country, irrespective of religious allegiance, wasn't there, because they did not understand the gravity of the situation, and the government was of the view that it is self-induced. Apni marzi se bhag ke aa gaye. So when your government is thinking that way, there is no other means of communicating it to you, and the only language which people in Kashmir are talking is this. There is a history behind this also. When National Conference was coming up, it was Jamaat-e-Islami, which was actually a Pakistan-based organization, which was used by the government to probably counter Sheikh Abdullah and others in between, and they are the ones who became, cancers later. So there are many things which have actually happened, but the fact of the matter was that there was no public reaction, no international reaction to this, and that also Pakistan did the mistake of taking it to the NHRC, and we put our point there. But other than that, once we come back to country, the same gentleman says, no, it is not correct, and it is self-induced. It is no human rights angle into it. In 10,000 rapes, there is no human rights angle. Massacres, mass murders, killings, merciless killings, mindless, no human rights angle in it. And go and don't say Allahu Akbar, then there's a human rights action in it. God is great.
Okay, now then after that period, comes kind of a third phase, which can be defined as the period from 2014 onwards, when BJP under Prime Minister Romton with an unprecedented majority at the center, and then they abrogated Article 370 and 35A.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't taken very well by the people at large, the leaders of Kashmir, people of Kashmir and the leaders of Kashmir. How do you see the development after 2014?
See, I will tell you. Now, from 2014, when you look at the Kashmir, there has been a gradual shift in the Kashmir policy. And the basic difference which started coming was that the security forces were given a better hand to handle things in Kashmir. Though things were happening, there was no misuse of that particular aspect. But the fact of the matter was that things started changing. I will not say improving, changing post 2014. Mind you, probably to my mind, again, my personal view, the government was preparing, and it prepared for 5 years, shaping the battlefield. They shaped the battlefield of Kashmir to bring in the situation conducive where they can do away with the worst thing which could have happened to the government, to the Indian nation. So they were prepared. So a lot of things changed. Ideas changed. Even the government in J&K with PDP, the BJP made a government in J&K. I hope you're aware. In this one,
Yes.
So things started changing. And on 5th August 2019, suddenly they found the right time, and then they abrogated the Article 370. And there were a lot of issues. But I can tell you one thing, that every Indian wanted that Article 370 abrogated. So there was no opposition to that. And I'm in only partial agreement with what you said, that a lot of people, leaders, did not like it. A lot of
No,
people
I meant the Kashmiri leaders.
No, Kashmir, the same thing I'm telling you. Kashmir is not the valley alone. Our mindset is only that Kashmir means Kashmir Valley. No,
the entire
Kashmir means
Ladakh,
the Jammu, the Ladakh, and the valley. Valley is the smallest in terms of area.
Yeah.
Probably smaller than many Jammu in terms of population also, but it's a question of there's a question mark on that. But the point is, the people of Ladakh welcomed it, people of Jammu welcomed it, and a section in Kashmir also welcomed it. See the situation. 5th August it takes place, until 4th of April nothing happens in Kashmir.
That had a reason, because the leaders were house arrested and put.
No. The
and there was
clampdown
on the internet.
It doesn't matter. There's a clampdown on internet, but there was no clampdown on the trigger of the gun. There was no clampdown on gunpowder.
But there was the fear of arrest and jail and everything.
No, how many? That fear of arrest has always existed. The fear never came up immediately. The fear existed always. Arrests were always earlier also there. But the things changed, because this 370 was not demanded by the Kashmiris. I hope you know it. It was not demanded by them. It was only a khichdi between the leader of Kashmir and leader of India. No Kashmiri went asking for 370. It is we who've done it. In nobody asked for 35A. By the 35A, who will be a citizen of India will be decided by government of J&K. That is what 35A does, besides many other things. So that's not getting to now 35A and on the provisions of 370. For that I can talk some other time.
And that's gone also now.
Gone, huh? So, but the point is, you should know, because whenever you spoke to any other gentleman who was not keen on knowing the Kashmir affairs, you ask him what is 370. So, bhai, koi bhi Hindustani jaakar ke Kashmir mein zameen nahi kharida. It is much more than zameen. It's much more than zameen. It gives them a separate constitution. It gives them every square inch of the territory called India, the government of India, the constitution of India is Sarvabhaum.
So do you think now, after all these changes, Kashmir is going to go the peaceful way or the development way, or
only one way, and that we need to understand. What has happened on 5th August 2019 is de jure change of that. Now you have to do it de facto on ground. You have to create conditions for the Kashmiri Pandits, Sardars, to get back.
Is the government doing it? Is the government trying for it?
They should. I have my doubts. See, the reason is, maybe they have a plan. It has taken 70 years to remove it. It can't change the complete scenario in 7 months or 14 months, if it has been there to allow the jihadis to take total control of the valley. Total control means they have infiltrated into government, into machinery, in police, in schools, in administration, everywhere. No one has taught you and me, Lalitaditya. No one has taught you and me, Abhinav Gupta, because it is not there in the syllabus. No one is teaching you that Kashmir had Sanskrit as the language, official language in 1450. Islam came to India in 1192. Islam, the first attack came in 711, and Kashmir remained non-Islamic till 1339. No one talks of it because the people who are teaching you history are dead. You have allowed them, and now they are so deep rooted in the system that it will take time. So what appears to a naked eye today is that not very much is being done in Kashmir. And a document came in on 31st of March 2020, that's last year. And very suddenly a document comes on a day when there is the whole country is in a lockdown, which to my mind is a retrograde step, where they have put a condition of 15 years, something. We can talk about it later. But the point is, the moment that document came, from 5th August till 4th of April, there was no patharbaji. There used to be encounters, but the people didn't come out to do stone pelting. So after that, again in Sopore, there was an encounter where when a terrorist was killed and they defied the COVID protocols and 1,000 people came out in Janaja. The point is, we are not dealing with the defaulters the way they should be dealt with. Because I'm sure you've heard Tariq Fatah once in a while. As he says that a life of a Muslim begins after death. That's what he says. What he means is that a follower of Islam is not scared of death, because for him, the life begins after death. Whereas we keep saying, hum jayenge, phir aayenge, that kind of thing. So there is a fundamental difference. What you're doing. So we have to handle these things with a lot of conviction and a lot of strength. You can't allow a genocide to go unnoticed. That too when you are a signatory to the UN Charter on Genocide. Original signatory, you signed it in 1949, ratified it in 1959. And you are not even accepting it. And you have good friends, China. When from 5th of August, within 3 months, within 4 or 5 months, China went to UN thrice taking this issue. But mind you, the world is with you on this. They took it up thrice in 5 months in UN Security Council. All other 4 countries said, take a walk. It's an internal matter of the, and still we have voices within the country who are saying, what have you done it? And there are some people who are saying that we'll reverse it, this, that, and the other. So let us not get into that. And, to my mind, the way forward is a perfect implementation of the Constitution of India in state of Jammu and Kashmir, Union Territory of, sorry, I stand corrected, Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Ladakh, it won't have any problems. But Jammu part of the Jammu and Kashmir, also it may not have too many problems. But Kashmir is going to be difficult, not going to be easy, but it has to be done. The Constitution of India is a very powerful tool, very well written, very clear, and very permissible constitution. See, I'll tell you, when I was there in Kashmir, I've spent a lot of time there at all levels. I was there as a youngster, I was there as a major, I was there as a CEO, I've been there for so many years. School dropouts who know nothing. They say that Kashmir was never a part of India. So, bolo bhai, tune kahan padha? Which history book have you read it? La ilaha illallah. He doesn't know. But it has been drilled into his mind that Kashmir was never a part. That is why I took you back 5,100 years. The Kashmiri Hindus even today have a Panchang which is 5,098 years old. Your Shak Samvat, Vikram Samvat has 2,700 years. The Saptarishi Sambat, which Kashmiri Hindus follow, is 5098 is running today, or 97. That is Kashmir. That is the history of Kashmir that you must know. But a school dropout comes out to my camp and he says, Kashmir was never a part of India. You are very Dushman, and go away. Because he knows nothing. He has been taught. The people teaching in the schools are them. People teaching in rest of the country are belonging to somebody who is not interested. So that is where the whole thing lies. That is where the whole thing lies. The mindset has to change. And it will change. It will change. But as of now, what is appearing is that not enough has been done. Just by doing a thing in the parliament and a president of India signing, I call it just a document. Unless the Constitution of India to the last article is implemented, you must implement all the acts which are there in India. Misuse of Religious Places Act, it is an act, 1988. It does not apply to J&K. Apply it. And then if there is one anti-India slogan or activity which takes place from any mosque, punish. That is the answer. So it will take time. It can't happen overnight. Because they are there everywhere. Everywhere. The jihadis have taken full control.
What you said, I mean, it was a great insight into a lot of history, which very many people don't know. And I hope that by removing this, as you said, this is just an initial step. It's just a constitutional law, removing 370 and 35A. I hope Kashmir comes, the people of Kashmir get their right opportunities, employment. There is development in Kashmir where people can get educated, health facilities, infrastructure. That's more important for people of the state, and the state to progress as such. Tourism is Kashmir's basic industry. And we just hope that after all this, great effort by the government, of course, to remove 370 after so many long years. We just pray and hope that Kashmir gets integrated, including Ladakh and Jammu and naturally, and people of Kashmir find integration.
Integration. We are already integrated. Only thing is, we'll have to. It will take time. It can't happen overnight. It will take time. All I say, I've been saying this many places, and many other people are also saying this, that you will have to take India to Kashmir. And any retrograde step which stops rest of the India to go into there for commercial activity or physical activity for other things is going to be retrograde. 1. 2, you will have to create conditions in Kashmir for the Kashmiri Hindus to return. Their other property is gone. चल संपत्ति तो गई, उसका आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते. लेकिन जो अचल संपत्ति है, their houses, their lands, their gardens, their orchards, get it back. The process to do that. A lot of people say in Kashmir, when I was there, people used to say, कुछ लोग हैं जो बंदूक उठा के और मार देते हैं, हम तो उसमें शामिल नहीं. It is not a question of हम तो शामिल नहीं है. You are a beneficiary of that exodus. Why? कि आप यहाँ बैठे हो, आपको मालूम है ये बंदा कल जाएगा, कल इसकी जमीन हड़प लो, इसका मंदिर हड़प लो, इसका वो हड़प लो, इसका वो ले लो. So as long as they are beneficiaries, they also don't want them to come back, because whatever they have hadpo will go away. So we'll have to create conditions for the Hindus to start having their political rights, start having their social things back, and start getting their properties back, and then giving them an assurance that this property has come back. Because the Hindus, I will tell you, when they lived in Kashmir, they did not live in ghettos. The Hindus lived in every district, every village. There were villages which had 2 Hindu houses and 498 Muslim houses, and they lived. So it is not going to be very easy for you to get back there. So let us see how we think things happen. But I'm quite optimistic, and I'm quite sure that if this current dispensation continues for some time, there may be some changes. things are already improving. Tricolors are already flying in the Kashmir Valley. It is only the core of the Kashmir Valley, which is where Yasin Malik lives. I hope you know that place is that place is called Gaza Strip. I hope that's very interesting, but that's called Gaza Strip. Yasin Malik, that great Gandhian with guns. So the people on the periphery were never anti-India. So get them into mainstream. You have a proper plan, a very good plan to get them back into the fold of the country. And they will come to India only if India goes there. It's as simple as that. So we need to make attempts to take India there. We need to create conditions for India to be flourishing there, and things will happen.
I'm sure India will surely go there. It has already started going,
yes,
and it will go. As it is, let's start with tourism, and then industries, and then infrastructure and everything.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Major
Thank
General
you.
Anuj Mathur, for talking to me. And if you like the video, viewers, don't forget sharing, commenting, and then pressing on the bell icon. And we'll surely bring you more informative videos next time. And please do comment and do let us know if you are interested in any other subject. We'll surely bring a lot of information to you on that, on those subjects. Thank you for watching, and stay safe and stay happy. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.